Boom! Yeah. Now that I got your attention, yeah. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Come on. Hey, every dove, every mirror. Hey, sit back again. Yeah. Hey, y'all mind walking with us for a second?
I almost committed suicide,
God.
and I was about to put all the tablets in my hand in my mouth, and he was at my back and said, "Oh, you want to die? I've been waiting for you to do that. When
Oh
your
my
children grow
God.
up, I'm just going to tell them to forgive me, and they'll forgive me anyway." And while he said that, I saw like a trance of people, women crying. You know, if I die today, these are the people that will cry. And the medication just dropped off my hands. Amen. And he said, "Oh, you didn't kill yourself anymore." And I turned to him, I said, "No, I'm going to live for myself, and I'm going to live for my children." And that was the day things
Marriage,
started working for me.
as you were saying, is really really close to my heart. It's an institution that God made, and it's something that I absolutely value. So when my marriage was coming to an end, I thought I was suicidal. I really thought, what's the use? And then I did a beautiful course, and I realised that I am not a failure. My marriage failed, that's the truth. But me fundamentally is Natalie. I'm not
I'm
a
going
failure.
to share my story. First of all, to encourage people, whether men or women, to say it can't be your fault. And even if we are being addressed with the Bible, you have to be submissive. To what point do we, stay as submissive wives? So my sharing my experience really is to encourage other women, and to not to empower in a negative way, but to make them aware that once you're abused, you're not only being affected, your children are being affected. My abuse started when I was in the law school. I realized that first it was sexually abusing me, having sex with me when he wanted, and when I wanted, no way. After that, we moved to the UK, and because there were no family members, friends around, it became even worse. And I saw my confidence going down. It was more of emotional abuse, telling me down, "Oh, you're too fat, there's so many pimples on your face, blah, blah, blah," things that would just make me look at myself in the mirror and tell myself, "Oh, I hate myself," honestly. And after some time, he started having an affair, which he made me know that is because I'm no longer good enough for him. And it got to a stage that he would try to make love to me, and as a Christian woman, I would think, "Oh, maybe God has done miracle today." And at the point of doing that, it goes, my mind is in my girlfriend now. So many things happened, and it was terrible. Bringing the girl's food to the house to eat, the girl using my home address to get parcels, you know, talking to her on the phone while we're on the bed. So many things. We were working in the same office. So while I'm on the train station waiting for train, he's driving off with his girlfriend. When I'm out of the church with my children in the snow, he's driving off with a girlfriend. So it was emotional. And when it was getting to the physical point, when he was threatening me, I'll beat you today, I'll kill you today. And I started to take it, okay, he's going to do this. And most times he will come at the middle of the night, bang the door, wake the children up and tell them to sit down, and make sure I sit in the middle of the children and my cousin. And he would tell me so many nasty things about myself. It was going on every day and every day. And at a point, I had to call the police. And when I did that, the family friends were like, "Oh, why did you call the police? You've been praying. You should have prayed, harder. Oh, he said he was going to beat you. He only threatened you. Why didn't you wait for him to beat you?" It went on and on like that. So I was always running out of the house. That was how I escaped the physical part of it. Each time I was always on my jacket, whether it's summer, whether it's winter. If I forget the house phone, my son will say, "Mommy, make sure the house phone is in your pocket." I sleep with my boots on. So once he's making all that trouble, I'll just, slightly walk out and lock the door, run out in the cold. It was going on and on. So one day, as a child of God, I said, "God, I love marriage and I want to stay in marriage, but if you know that this marriage is going to kill me, if you know that this marriage and this abuse is going to damage my children, because my son was just 6 and he was already getting aggressive, I said, Lord, I pray that you take this man out of my life so that I can be sane. And 2 days after like 2-3 years of abusing me, he just came with his girlfriend's suitcase and said, I'm moving to my girlfriend's house. And with, I think I danced that day. I said, that's good. But even after he left, he had the key to the house, and I would never have thought that he would come in. He was still coming in. He's talking me. If I'm taking the children to school, you will see him there. If I want to pick my son from school, he's there. You know, he was everywhere, telling everybody in the office how bad I was, how I couldn't have sex well, how useless I am, how, you know, things went down for him. It was awful. It was awful. And that really, really took away my confidence. And to be honest, even though I'm a lawyer by profession, I knew what I could have done. I couldn't do anything because the society would not agree with what you want to do. The church was against my calling the police. You know, family, friends, there was really nobody to
be honest with you, I don't think I can. You are a strong woman.
Very strong.
Natalie, I know you build people, you're life coach. Somebody in that situation, how can you bring their confidence
It's amazing
back?
how much we will take, but the day that comes, and you know, God answered your prayer by your former husband deciding to move out of the house, and that was the beginning of the end. It sounds like, and it's only then really Yinka can help be offered, because we can't help anyone who doesn't want help. But once the person speaks out, then there's a way of recovery. And the work that I'm involved in, the recovery is generally to go through the pain and to come out of the other end. It's not about affirmations, and it's not about saying good things. It's actually going through what were you believing about yourself. Drive home a point at a particular time can contribute towards a man expressing his anger in ways that he may not want to.
So, which is true, but at the same time, a perpetrator does not necessarily need you to even say anything before they abuse you. If I'm going to use my personal experience, I used to be extremely quiet. I grew up to not want any trouble. So in my marriage, if he's speaking, I don't say anything. But that did not stop him from doing what he didn't do, what he was going to do.
Sometimes you're not saying anything.
That was the problem. I'm talking, you're not saying
You're not
anything.
talking.
Then you don't want to say something.
You're in
By the
trouble.
time you go to the pastor, they say, oh, when he's talking, just keep quiet.
Keep quiet.
That keeping quiet can make him even
You're
more
being
angry.
submissive.
So I want to say honestly, there is no justification for it. Because our daughters, our sons are going to grow up thinking that there are exceptions to being abused, and I don't want to agree with that.
I think there's all different levels there. I think that if there's a person who maybe has been brought up in that background will want to be violent anyhow, whether you're loud or not.
Yeah.
And then there's the other end of the spectrum where sometimes women can exacerbate the situation by not managing their anger very well.
Yeah, I would still disagree, because I used to have a friend who was very, very aggressive to the spouse.
A female friend.
A female friend. And to the point that if she wants her voice to be heard, she could actually jump on the man and, you know, drag the cloth and everything. And every time I saw that, I never saw that man raise the finger at her, which means the man can actually control his temper. So if you say because the woman is talking, that's why the man is getting angry, I still don't
agree with that.
Because if you grow up to say, I will not do this, it doesn't matter what that woman will do to you or the man. Let's say, because abuse is both ways.
Yeah, it's both ways.
There is no justification.
Thank
to
you.
Be honest,
You're not saying there isn't any justification for you to abuse anybody. It takes two to tango. Do you at any point think it was all your fault or partly your fault? I just wanted to emphasize this for our listeners. Are there things you would have done differently? You know, you thought you didn't do then?
Yeah, naturally, when you get to that stage of losing your confidence, you start to think it's your fault. Then he will always tell you it's your fault. It's because you're sitting there, that's why I'm doing this. It's because my mother-in-law too was abusing me. And he said, oh, because you didn't sit there to watch telly with my mom, that's why I'm having an affair. And I was thinking, maybe I should have been watching telly with her. But at the end of the day, leaving the
can't
house
hold-
by
it's not
6
funny,
a.m.
but-
I used to leave the house at 6 a.m. I won't get home till about 7 o'clock in the evening. Then I'll have to do her food for her. Then I have a baby in my hand. There was no way I could. Yes, I've always thought that it was my fault. Because even when I was seeking help from pastors, it was all about, oh, you said he did this. Can you do that? You know, oh, he's shouting. Can you keep quiet? Then I said, oh, I kept quiet, but he's angry again. You know, it was, but after some time I said, no, it can't always be my fault.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, yes, I believed it was all my fault, and I tried to make things right, even though they were already right. Then later I said to myself, no, it's not about me now. It's about him.
But
He
for
has
our
a
listeners
problem.
listening out there, what can they do to regain their trust?
I think it begins with self first. You know, once we have an esteem of which is a line that, listen, because your strength is higher now than it will be ever been
Definitely.
from where you've been. So there's something about having a line that you just don't cross. And for me, once I learned about who Natalie is, because my esteem was based on my marriage, so when that was breaking down, that broke down, then my esteem was based on my work and on my so it's like God stripped all that away.
God.
You know, all that away and said, Natalie, you are divine as you are, you know, and it's until there's a line set that I won't go down, and I therefore won't let anybody else trample on. I think that for me, that's the only way really to go forward, because it really baffles me how families can, you know, I wasn't brought up with a father, so I didn't really see domestic violence, but how people, like your story, you said, my sister, is how we can be in an environment and then repeat the same patterns. You know, as we get older, you think that if you're in an abusive relationship, you wouldn't go in it, but this, somehow life brings us into that familiarity, whether we like it or not. So it's a difficult one, really, but for me it comes down to oneself, how much you're willing to take, and you know, what value
He
do
has
you
a
place on
girlfriend,
yourself.
fine. I went to the pastor, he says, wait for him. Even if he comes midnight, welcome him. So he comes midnight, I still give him food, and he says, oh, I've eaten at my girlfriend's house.
And he will boldly say that.
Yes, because he knew I was born again, there was nothing I could do. And he boasted and said, the only thing she can do is to pray and plead the blood of Jesus.
Oh,
And
Father.
that's what I did for years anyway. So tolerance, yes, is good. I love marriage. I counsel people, and by the grace of God, a lot of people that we have counseled, they have wonderful marriages. But to what point do you tolerate? And what do you tolerate anyway?
And I think that's a personal level, because what one
Yeah,
will,
it is.
you know, one won't, and we've all got our own internal gauge. Our culture will affect that. Our lifestyle, what we've grown up to see, will affect that, you know. Because personally, as somebody of African Caribbean descent, there's a feistiness in my blood that certain things, and being submissive, you know, I believe is a strength, but it's not a weakness. So there's certain things not coming from a traditional African culture that, you know, I won't take. I was brought up with a mother who fixed the light bulb, who did the plugs herself. So I've come from that quite independent background. Yeah, I learned how to be submissive, but I'm nobody's dog. And you know, I love the way when God created woman from Adam, He created us from a man's side. So I'm at his side. I'm not at his foot, and I'm not at his head to overtake him. So there is a subtle difference. So there's certain things I won't take, and you know, people used to say to me, "But your husband comes home." You know, he's not beating you.
Hmm.
I got that,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I got that. At least it's not beating
Yeah.
you. At least it's taking care of your children. You know, and those were
Did
the
you
things I
feel
lived
that
with for
people
years.
understood your predicament, and how did your family, friends, or your church member react when you tell them you're leaving or you're divorcing? How did they feel?
I got support from my parents, but extended family were like, "Oh, why don't you stay? Oh, your mom, you know, was able to stay. She's happy now. Your auntie had stayed. She's happy now," and they were giving me examples upon examples, and I thought, okay, if that stayed, I can stay as well. Then for the church initially, yes, initially they were like, "You can't leave. You just have to stay. Don't call the police." And I can remember one night he came and he really threatened to kill me that night, and I managed to escape in the snow.
Threatened to kill with what?
Yeah, because he brought the girl's parcel in the house, and I was questioning it. So I ran out of the house, and the first thing that came to my mind was my pastor. So I said, "Pastor, I'm alone outside in the cold, 11 p.m. What do I do? Can anybody come around to help me? My children are in the house." And I called two of them, and they said, "Oh, it's late now. Even if we have to come, the time before we get there, I think you should just call the police." At that stage, I cried. And I said, "I should have done this all this while. But now I'm alone." So when that happened, there were so many people that objected to that, from the Nigerian community. Why did you have to? So it was all about, has called the police. "Oh, you've driven your husband out and you called the police. You shouldn't have called the police. This woman went through worse. She didn't call the police. Now her marriage is better. You've not even gone through that stage. You're already calling the police." So there was so much going on in my head. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have called the police. Oh, what do I do? And I started getting rejection from the church. Now she's a single mom. She's divorced. Oh, she's not as holy. If I'm looking good today, they say, "Oh, maybe she has a boyfriend." There was so many things going on. But at some point, I had to tell myself, like Natalie said, who am I? The Bible says I am fearfully and wonderfully bitter, to
made.
the point where if he goes out in the morning, I'll be praying, "God, let him have an accident." Oh yes, I'm not going to lie. I was praying that, and when he comes back and he's okay, I will get angry the more.
That he's alive.
That he's alive. I didn't want him to die, but I wanted him in the hospital, honestly.
To feel the pain that
To
you
feel
felt.
the pain, and it was the physical pain I wanted him to feel. I was so bitter for a very long time. I didn't realize until one day I realized that, "Come, why are you doing this?" Then I got a revelation. The only reason you're bitter is because you're alive. So many people have gone through even less, and they're no more. Move forward. And I think it took me over a year, to be honest. I rededicated my life to Christ right there in Winners Chapel, and I said, "God, whether he comes back, whether he doesn't come back, whether he asks for forgiveness, whether he even believes that he's wronged me, is no longer relevant. Whatever it is you want to do with me, I'm ready to be used by you." And I felt light, and I started having wonderful sleep. I realized I've just been, punishing myself for years.
In bondage.
So it was not easy at first. No, there was nothing you could preach to me. If you come to me and say, "I'm getting married," I just look at you and I couldn't
So you're
be bothered.
bitter about
Yeah,
other people getting married
I was
as well.
bitter because I was thinking, "Oh, you're just going there to suffer." So I hated marriage. Every calling God had put in my hands, I hated it. And I told God, "If you're going to use me, if you're going to make me cancel couples again, then you need to bring my husband back." But when he wasn't coming back, and I said to myself, "Even if you don't bring him back, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to do what you've asked me to do." So that was the turning point for me. Forgiveness is very, very powerful.
Oh, it is.
When you forgive, you're only helping yourself, not the other person. It's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, because it wasn't easy for me. But from the day I made up my mind to let go, God came into my life and he took control.
Forgiveness for me, is about not holding ill will against somebody for what they did or did not do. And I truly believe that true forgiveness, you forget the pain.
Yeah.
You really forget. And for me, forgiveness, as we've been saying, is about how do I react to somebody who I believe has hurt me. And a lot of the time, I'm causing my own illness and sickness with bitterness and malice and resentment. And it took me years, you know, especially when we're submissive wives, especially when we're doing the right thing. Then why, you know,
Why do I need to be the one to forgive?
Why do
He's
we
owed
suffer?
me. He needs to
Yeah.
come and ask for forgiveness,
That's right.
isn't
Yeah.
it?
So for me, it was a triple way of forgiving myself. There's a lot of times I was saying that, you know, I should have left earlier and stuff like that. Also forgiving the other, and ultimately forgiving God. I was so angry to God that as a Christian, fasting and praying, why have you put me through this? You claim you're the big I am, and you're not actually. I go for a prayer walk most mornings round about that time, and you should have heard me moaning and moaning to God, telling him it's your fault, this, that, and the other. So I had to learn how to forgive God. And one of the practices that I practice is that who I'm upset with, I can imagine them in my eye and seeing them asking for my forgiveness, and I saying yes to them, and also me saying to them, will you forgive me for the ways of behaving, even if they never come to forgive, even if I never hear them again. It's a way of really releasing that person and releasing myself, and it is so easy. Like you said, you get your sleep back, you know, your peace of mind, which really is priceless. I'm so grateful for what I've been through, because without it, I would not be able to be the coach that I am. I would not be able to relate to people's pain. So in the time I used to be angry with God, why am I going through it? I've come out and saying, God, it's the best thing actually
That you've gone
that's
through.
happened to me, because I'm a different woman because of that.
Thank you very much. They say time is a great healer. What can an individual in this situation do to heal their emotions and physical wounds quickly? Natalie.
First, seek help. Speak to somebody who will support you. And a lot of the times, I think you asked a question before about, you know, what do you do when you're in abuse? You have to be careful with the advice that
You
you're
get from
getting.
people.
Yeah. And you really just want somebody to hear you and be alongside you, not to give you any suggestions or tell you what to do. So really pray. I'm telling you, the people out there that will be alongside you, we cannot do it alone. We were not made to be isolated people. We're sociable beings, and really reach out. I think that is the first step, as long as praying as well.
Thank you. So you mean for our emotion and physical wounds to be healed, we need to pray. We need to be careful who we're telling our stories as well.
But tell your story, you know, really tell your story. It is so healing. I'm really a champion of talk therapy, how speaking it out, getting it out of your head. And you know, my sister sort of sharing those thoughts of killing and of murder, they're real. And many of us have it, but yeah, as Christians, you know, we're not supposed to think that. But when you share it out with another, you'll be surprised. Yeah, if you know what I wanted to do, I can't even, some of it's just too much. The thoughts of revenge that I had in my mind of what I wanted to do because of the anger welling up. And to hear that others having it goes, yeah, it's natural when you're in resentment and unforgiveness. This is the thoughts that we'll have. So the first thing is to pray, and the second is really to find somebody who is like-minded.
You know,
to reach out
many
to.
people have the same experience and as you, and they find themselves withdrawn, depressed, and have low self-esteem. You are an exemption, I must say. I haven't listened to your story. You are, seriously. What is your secret?
My secret is Jesus. He is the one that took me out of the miry clay and set my feet on the solid rock to stay. He was the only one I could hold on to 24/7, and he never disappointed me. And secondly, I was bold enough to seek help. I went online, I went to Women's Aid. You don't have to be ashamed about it. You know, there's Women's Aid. Then I run a charity now, Wonderfully Made Woman, that helps women, and a lot of women are getting help. So you can go online. There's so many services now. You know, it's not like maybe 20, 15 years ago. There's so many organizations that are helping. Even churches are helping now. So please, I will encourage you, What I tell people when they say, how did you get out of faith? The first thing I did was to pray. Then the second thing, because faith without work is dead, was to seek help. To, tell myself, this is my situation. Because Christians, we are so good with, it is well, it is well, it is well.
Smiley face.
Even when you are dying, and you're not seeking help for yourself, you're seeking help for your children as well. Because as a mother, the way you are is how your children will feel. Every time then I said I'd forgiven, I just find that I will see him outside, maybe in the shopping mall, And I remember one day I went to buy meat at Abattoir, and I saw him carrying 2 bags of meat for his girlfriend. Oh my God, I blew out, and I started talking. Look at you, your children are at home suffering, blah, blah, blah. I was just going on, and he drove, and I drove at his back. When I got home, I think the Holy Spirit said, have you really forgiven? Then another time I saw him again, and it was like, anytime I tell God, I've forgiven, I've let go, I'll just see him somewhere. And the anger will come up and all of that. How did I know that I'd forgiven? Was the day I was coming from a choir practice, and I went to buy something with the children, and I saw him and the woman. She was pregnant. The first thing that would have come to my mind was, he didn't allow me have the number of children I wanted to have. But I saw myself at peace with myself. And I just strolled, I even said hello to them. At that point, I knew I had forgiven him. And I'd forgiven the lady. So there was a difference. So, my dear, I don't know if he's a female now. If you hear he was getting married and all the anger, it's possible you've forgiven, but you just feel cheated. It could just be that you feel cheated, but honestly, let go. Your own will come, and a better one will come. Honestly.
It's also a process,
Yeah.
There's a process
It's not a
with
day
forgiveness.
thing. It's not.
And for me, it's a feeling, and it's also forgetfulness, because I truly believe when I've truly forgiven, I forget the pain that was attached to it.
Yeah.
The incident I don't forget, but the pain is truly non-existent. It comes out of my heart, and the Lord has healed it. But for me, forgiveness is an unforgiveness of feelings.
Yeah.
I think Natalie is right there. When you have truly forgiven somebody, then when you see them, or when you remember what they've done, you just laugh over it. You won't feel that pain anymore.
No, not at all.
So I
won't.
think the person that have sent us this
Yeah, you've
message,
not.
you haven't truly forgiven.
Yeah.
You just need to go back to God. And like Natalie said again, it is a process. Someone said, in what ways is the church failing to address issues relating to domestic abuse of all types, using scriptures such as women should be submissive? What are the impacts of domestic violence in children? I think you've mentioned a bit about it, but using the scripture about being submissive.
I was in a seminar recently, and the pastor's wife was saying, we need to be submissive, and she was giving examples of how she's been submissive to what her husband has asked her to do. And I said, good. At what point can we be submissive? And I gave example of a woman who, anytime the husband wants to make love to her, we have to tie her with a cling film and legs opened, and we have to spit on her continuously during sexual intercourse. How submissive can that person be? To what point? It's good. The Bible says we should be submissive. There's no argument about that. But at the same time, we need to know what these people are going through. You need to know as a church or as a leader in church what that person is going through. And don't ever use somebody else's experience, to tell that other person off. I don't think the church is doing so much. The church, I would say, is failing daily. And unfortunately, a lot of women are no longer speaking out. They just want to keep their mouth shut, because when you go to church, what do they tell you? Nobody has ever told you, call the police. Nobody will tell you, go to Women's Aid. The only thing they will tell you is that they pray. They will tell you they fasted. And the pastor's wife, who has the best husband, will tell you what she does that makes her marriage work. But at the end of the day, my husband may not be the pastor,
You
or
know,
may
can you
not
please
have that
tell us
character.
more about what you are doing to create awareness for women on this same issue, domestic violence?
Thank you. I run a charity organization that was set up in 2011, which is called Wonderfully Made Woman. Initially, we started as a first point of contact to women who were experiencing domestic abuse in the community, who do not know where to go or know where to go but have no confidence to call, or maybe they have visa issues. So we were standing as a first point to do all the phone calls and referrals for them. Now we do confidence building events, and we also raise awareness on domestic abuse, how it affects the woman
A
and
woman
the
is a
children.
man's helpmeet. And remember, we're living in a fallen age. You know, when God made Adam and Eve, it was for life together. And then Moses and the people that then started complaining that if a wife wouldn't make the eggs right, we should divorce her. That's not God's plan, but this is the fallen life. And no, I think we cry to God, you know, He will give us the answers to leave, because that is not what He wants for any of us, definitely not.
I've got the last question for you, Natalie. So, how can a victim's process, a victim's thought process be coached to have a beautiful mind towards himself, towards other, after the trauma of the abuse?
Well, it's a good question. For me, when I went into really looking into healing myself, what I learned is how I value others is how I value myself, and how I value myself is how I value others. So the practice that we do is go through the lies. What am I believing about myself? I'm a failure, I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, life is a waste of time. They're the lies. It's a thing called verification. The Bible said, speak the truth and it will set you free. Am I a failure? No, that's false. Am I stupid? No, that's false. Is life worth giving up? False. So if they're false, what is actually true? And it's about truth telling, moment by moment, in what I'm believing and thinking. So the truth is that I'm divinely and wonderfully made. God has a purpose for my life. He knew it before life began. So it's really changing the story and going more into my heart and less into my head, and finding out what's actually true about me. Because once I know what's true about Natalie, then when people speak to me, if they're lies, then it doesn't stick. And to be honest, it shows a reflection of who they are, not a reflection of who I am.
To encourage everyone that have gone through domestic abuse or are experiencing it, please speak out and know that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Make sure you do not stay in an abusive relationship. And if you're not yet married, please, you need proper counseling. Make sure all these issues are resolved before you get married. And if you're already going through it, you need to seek help. Seek help, and pray. God bless you.
Thank you
Amen.
very much.
Amen.
Some people say walking takes too long.